stop filming.
My outlet is kind of about live streaming, where I like to cover an event from beginning to end and really just show the truth of the matter. Because the reality is that there are bad actors on every side. People make good decisions, bad decisions, ugly decisions. And so by having an account of what happens from beginning to end, I think that that's really important to help people understand it.
You understand? You will be arrested. You will not leave.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ford Fischer.
All right, thanks Tyler from the Second Amendment Institute for inviting me here. I have a little bit of an unconventional topic that maybe you all haven't sort of heard about or considered, so I'm hoping to bring something new to all of you. In the year 2000, Charlton Heston punctuated a turbulent time for the Second Amendment by holding a rifle above his head and declaring that it could only be taken from his cold, dead hands. Do we remember that? In doing so, he was unequivocal. He presented the constitutional right that he cherished not as a passive right to be politically defended, but a revolutionary right whose use defends itself. So my name is Ford Fischer. I run a website called newstoshare.com, and I want to talk to you about a constitutional right that I cherish, and that's the First Amendment right to film, especially filming the police. Like all your other rights, your right to film is inherent in your humanity. The First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law that infringes upon 5 rights: faith, speech, press, assembly, and petitioning the government. These rights pre-exist our Constitution, and so they include exercises in freedom that our founders lived too early to imagine, but were smart enough to protect. That's faith traditions that weren't yet practiced, new forms of protest, speech through technology. We hold all of these as a part of our human rights protected under the First Amendment, even if they're new. Nothing could be more fundamental and more revolutionary than your right to film your own government. This right is protected as both an aspect of freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Just like we understand that the Second Amendment is not exclusively for those who are part of a militia, the First Amendment and your right to the press is not exclusively your right if you're part of some kind of media organization. It's not just for those who get a paycheck from the mainstream media. Particularly in the age of democratized media, every one of you can be the press. Every policy that the government enacts ultimately requires enforcers. From the tax code to the drug war, from gun control to traffic and parking, the police are the enforcers of the state's will. Filming police officers is your constitutional and human right, and I'd even suggest that it's your duty as a citizen whenever possible. How many times have police situations entered the news where two sides argue the merits of a case without any actual proof? Was it brutality? Was the police officer's life in danger? If your opinions of a situation are shaped by the news media without actually bearing witness, then you simply serve ideology. Liberty and justice require truth first. I actually come from a police family, so filming the police isn't necessarily something to imply that they've done something wrong or that they will. Think about Fourth Amendment protection against unlawful search and seizure, or the jury trials promised by the Sixth Amendment. Our country was founded on the promise of protection for life, liberty, and property. Our constitutional rights are specifically set up to restrict the government's ability to deprive somebody of those sacred rights, requiring an extraordinary burden of proof at every single step, and that's a good thing. Every single police interaction has the potential to end with the deprivation of those exact same rights. From a ticket to civil asset forfeiture, your property is at risk in any police situation or interaction. Through injury or arrest, your liberty is at risk, and ultimately, so is life. Last year, police in America killed 1,165 people. That some number of these deaths were justified does not minimize the tragedy of each life lost. Particularly if we identify as pro-life, wouldn't we want to know exactly how each killing went down? The burden must be on the state to prove that justice was done or that life and liberty were protected when it kills somebody. Think about how many layers of evidence gathering, trial, and appeals it takes to administer the death penalty in this country. It's difficult by design, but on the street, it only takes one step: trigger pull. Just as trials are public, we as taxpayers deserve to see the events leading up to a police killing. Without seeing it, we can't possibly know if justice was done, or ensure that the victim gets justice in a bad shoot. Footage of the police, of course, serves them when they do act properly. If an officer truly fired his service weapon or tased someone as a last resort and did everything right, shouldn't they want the public to see that? In the face of outrage in the age of social media where information travels faster than bullets, wouldn't they want those recordings to exonerate them? Raw footage is truth. It knows no political leaning, and it doesn't care whether what it sees is good or bad. Cameras are indifferent. The importance of police video extends far beyond just life lost. Every day, police fulfill the basic task of taking away people's freedom and property. Arresting someone, charging with a crime, confiscating their possessions are all tasks they're endowed with, and we as the public hope that they do that in the interest of liberty, right? That's what their job is, and that's good, that's fine. Americans hope that the police catch thieves. We hope they confiscate items used in the commission of a crime as evidence. We hope that they take property that was stolen so that the rightful owner may take it back. These deprivations of liberty and property can all be justified, but only complete video allows us to see whether they were performed in the service of justice. Now, I know what everybody's thinking. Even if you agree that footage of police activity is essential, why not just rely on body cameras? And body cameras are wonderful. I fully support them being implemented as much as possible. They should come with the least ability to tamper as they possibly can and the most transparency that they can to the public. But just as police are no substitute for home defense, I think everybody in this room probably agrees with that, police-operated cameras are no substitute for civilian-owned footage. In early 2017, a Baltimore police officer planted drugs near the scene of an arrest, and then he turned on his body camera to record himself pretending to discover them. He was only found out because the particular body cam device that he was wearing actually records the 30 seconds before it was turned on. So it ended up inadvertently showing him planting them. And so the officer later claimed that he actually did indeed find drugs at the scene, but that he had picked them up having forgotten to turn his body camera on, and then he put them back down to reinvent the situation in which he found them. Whether that was true or not, he was found guilty a couple years later. But what happened to his victim? His victim couldn't afford bail, and he sat in jail for 6 months before the body camera footage was released and exonerated him. The only part of the story where video acted in the interest of justice was the portion that the officer didn't intentionally film, and it only freed his victim when the public saw it. When civilians film the police, they control the video and they can put it on YouTube in minutes, or they do what I do, which is live stream. The world is seeing it right as it's happening. Some body camera footage, though, never sees the light of day, or it goes through enormous, legal processes before it ends up actually coming out, such as in that particular case, where 6 months of somebody's liberty were lost because the public didn't have access to that video. So the more complete your video is, the more accountability it can serve, and the most immediately. Footage in the situation I just described could have exonerated him in days instead of months. And it also, by the way, would have validated or discredited the police officer's side of the story. If he actually did find drugs there, pick them up, and then put them back down, he would want complete video that would show that. It would have exonerated him from straight up planting evidence. So absent totally complete footage, we will never know for sure. So filming the police doesn't necessarily mean you think that they're the bad guy in every situation. To the dishonest cop, video could jeopardize them, sure. But if you have any respect or faith in the police, then you honor that esteem by filming them. An honest cop has nothing to lose by being recorded and everything to gain. Body cameras, important as they are, only cover one angle. Footage of an officer in third person isn't shaken by the officer's movements and shows every single direction around them. If a cop is threatened from any direction other than their front, only you, the citizen, have the ability to create a complete account of what happened. You could be protecting them. You could be creating evidence of assault against a police officer by filming that situation happen. So we know that justice for the public and justice for the police themselves are served by filming them as they interact with people. What I want to tell you is that this justice is inherently linked to our freedom, and we're here at the Defending Freedom Action Summit, so trying to defend some freedom here. Our Pledge of Allegiance concludes by saying liberty and justice for all. So we as Americans understand that justice and liberty are inherently intertwined. To be free means that any deprivation of liberty must be just. And to fight for that justice by filming the government is an exercise of your liberty. Police can sometimes be agitated, and you saw that in the video that played before there. I've had cops say, stop filming or whatever, and they might tell you the same thing. They're wrong, right? You always have, in public, you always have a First Amendment right to record. Of course, the same is true of activists and civilians on any side as well. So I mostly film activism and there are protesters out there, usually they want their message heard, right? They go out there to preach some kind of a message and they want people filming it because then it gets out there. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes non-police actors, right? People on the left, people on the right, whatever, who are out on the street might also tell you, hey, we don't want to be filmed. If they're in public, you have the right to film. Always give the police room to do their work. So I never want to suggest that anybody kind of interfere with a situation, and that goes both to journalistic standards, but also to, you don't want to interfere with what the police are actually doing. But never comply with that order not to film, whether you're a detainee, a suspect, an activist, a journalist, or a bystander. From truth comes reason, and from reason comes liberty. We cannot reasonably understand a situation that we don't have a truthful account of, and we can't protect liberty without reason. Nobody has ended up with more freedom or justice because they were lied to. You will never find an example of that occurring. So when you come across a situation where the government's enforcers are in a position to take away life, liberty, or property, your camera makes it freedom's safest place. Exercise that right. Like leveraging any other constitutional right, you normalize it by exercising it. If fear or indifference dissuade you from filming the police, it's a right you won't have anymore when it does matter. It's a right whose use protects itself and every other right. So use it or lose it. And so with that, I want to conclude by holding my iPhone high above my head and saying, from my cold, dead hands. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, I don't think I went too long, so I'm happy to hear anybody out.
I have questions. I'm questioning this statement, no one has ever ended up with more freedom than one you just made. I'm thinking of people, and you see this all the time, I'm going to be frank about this, who are breaking the law or having criminal behavior, but they're filming the cop and they're getting it at an angle to only see, the bad part of the suspect resisting arrest or what have you. Then it's blasted out all over the place. I don't necessarily agree, if I might say, with it's always good to film cops no matter what. I think that can be twisted, and I also think that people definitely act. There are many situations where people will deliberately act out more to get in front of the camera. And then the other thing I have to add, which probably for me is the most important thing, Charlottesville. Anyone can go online and find the truth of what actually happened there, and it is still the obsession of the left that they refer to our president and say over and over and over. You hear it all the time. You hear from people on quote-unquote our side. Oh, he's a white supremacist because of what he said about Charlottesville. When there's so much video footage showing incredible, horrific violence on the part of these so-called, anti-Nazi protesters. So I'd like to get your take on that. Why isn't more of that truth getting out?
Okay, so there were two parts of that question. So the first one was about sometimes footage of the police comes out and it's incomplete or it's manipulated in some way, and that ends up working sort of against the police. The fundamental part of what you just said is the fact that that footage is limited, right? If footage is being released in a intentionally manipulative way, then that goes against what I'm kind of talking about here. Film things in the most complete and objective way possible. This is why in my own business, I actually like live streaming. Live streaming you cannot possibly accuse somebody of manipulating a live stream. It is live, so with maybe a third of a second delay from when you film it to when it ends up in somebody's computer watching it, it's complete, it's uneditable just by the very nature of what the medium is. So yeah, it is possible that, if somebody punches a cop and then the cop punches them back or something, and then they cut out the part where the person punches the cop, right, and then they release it, it looks like a cop is punching somebody unprovoked. I totally understand the issue with that, but the issue with that isn't the act of filming the situation. The issue with that is the fact that it was manipulatively edited. Sometimes you don't know when a situation is going to end up mattering, so start filming it before it matters. And that actually drives me into the second part. So you brought up Charlottesville, and I was there. Right, I don't know if you know about my work or that, but yeah, some of that footage that actually you saw up there was shot by me and was in Charlottesville. One of the shots there, you saw a guy named Richard Preston hold up a handgun, and yeah, but yeah.
It's correct that the cops also, the First Amendment of people that were there to defend the statue and their beliefs, they were led through the gauntlet of the Antifa people.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, the question is basically about Charlottesville and were the two sides kind of driven into each other by the police. So I was there. I reported at the time that my opinion was basically the police did almost nothing. The number one fundamental failure of the police in Charlottesville, there were several of them, and I would recommend reading the independent review by a law firm called Heafy. There's a report called the Heafy Report, and I believe it's Heaphy. I might be wrong about that, but the Heafy Report on Charlottesville, if you search some spelling of that, you'll find it. Yeah, the fundamental failure of the police there is that they didn't separate the two sides. Generally speaking, in a protest situation like that, and I've attended thousands of them, the law enforcement objective is two things: protect life, limb, and property, right? Make sure that people aren't hurting each other, breaking each other's stuff, whatever, and protect the right to speak. Neither of those law enforcement objectives were fulfilled in Charlottesville, right? People got hurt, 3 people died, and there wasn't any speaking that was done. There was a list of speakers who were going to talk, and it didn't actually happen. So I could go on, having been there for 3 days, right? I could go on and on about the sort of failures that occurred there, but I would generally say that the value of live streaming, of filming there was extremely critical, because when I was still wearing my Kevlar vest and my ballistic helmet when I got back to my hotel that day. And when I turned on CNN and saw the way they were describing it, it could have been a completely different situation. And that's not to bash them in particular as opposed to any other network, but that was the network I turned on, and the way they were describing it just wasn't the way that I had lived that experience. That kind of live coverage shows the thing beginning to end. And to give one super quick example from that, and why it matters to begin filming before the thing turns horrific or whatever, James Alex Fields, who was convicted on the killing, drove by me 6 minutes before that attack. My live stream captured that inadvertently. He was just a car on the road like any other. And we now know exactly where he was at a specific time 6 minutes before the attack, and that ended up being relevant in his trial. So, sometimes you can't know what's going to matter, which is why you should film police interactions or civilian issues like this whenever possible, if there's any kind of potential for it to go haywire. And I'm happy to talk more with you about that after, but Tyler gave me the 2-minute warning, so I want to get one more question there.
How do you handle it? I mean, you obviously do this all the time. How do you handle it when the police very directly and very authoritatively and meanly tell you stop video? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so the question was, how do you handle it when a police officer authoritatively tells you to stop filming? Generally speaking, so I mean, first of all, you don't want to endanger your life. It depends on what the exact situation is. So, but generally speaking, your camera is your sort of defense, right? I think that generally speaking, usually the police will say something like you're interfering or you're getting in the way or you're too close. Try to establish with them where is the line? Where can I film from? So that's the usual conversation that I end up having, where if a police officer says, you have to go, they tend not to want to say the exact words stop filming, because it's extremely clearly unconstitutional. You cannot tell somebody in public, stop filming. You can tell them to go somewhere else. You can say you're in an unsafe spot. Please leave, basically. But you can't literally tell someone to turn your camera off. So you tend to be firm, respectful, polite. I have a First Amendment right to film, and you can back off if that's what's necessary, if they're telling you to do so, right? You don't want to be in the way of what they're doing. But at the same time, I would basically never advise that there's a situation where actually turning off your camera is the right thing to do. It is always an unlawful order. Do we have time for one more, if anybody else has one? Yeah. Right.
I think that kind of really selective misuse is extremely common, or sort of.
Yeah, so the question was about the Covington Catholic situation, and this is something that, so I was there at March for Our Lives, but it was gigantic, right? I live streamed at that, and I had no idea that situation occurred because I wasn't near where it was. There were 250,000 people there that day, and that was 30 people who were involved in that. To people who don't know, that was multiple groups kind of were sort of yelling at each other, and basically a Native American was using a drum, and there was somebody with a Make America Great Again cap in front of him kind of grinning at him, and a lot of the media painted it as a disrespectful gesture. But but was very much excluding the fact that there was another group called like the Black Israelites or something like that, that was there that had kind of provoked the situation beforehand. So these individual little clips were published, and depending on which clip you saw, they either, you know, the MAGA guy either looked good or bad, or the Native American looked good or bad, and many of them completely excluded the Black Israelites who actually started the situation. This is what was really funny about that situation. The only actual group that had live stream footage from beginning to end of it was the Black Israelites. What I would suggest is that obviously they were there with a particular agenda, and I wish that I had been there, because if I had live streamed it beginning to end, if I had been in that exact like spot to cover that, then there wouldn't have been the kind of ambiguity that people are fighting about in the media right now. So right now, that kid is suing the Washington Post for $250 million because they misreported what was going on there, or that's what he says, right? And so they're going to go back and forth fighting over what exactly does the footage show. And if you had complete footage of that situation beginning to end, there wouldn't be any ambiguity there. Whoever is right, there would be justice. So I think that's all the time I have, but I would love to answer questions or talk to anybody else after. Thank you for having me here.